When I was 16 years old, I did what a lot of young people in our country do. I got my driver's license. I also bought my first car with money saved up from working. It was not a new car by any means. In fact, it was just a year younger than me at that time, but it was mine. A light blue 1986 Chevy Nova hatchback. Rust beginning around the wheel wells. Some leaks around the sunroof that someone had added to it along the way after it left the factory. I bought it at a car dealer's auction for a few $100s, thanks to a family member who worked with cars and attended these. I added a CD player to it, seat covers to hide the torn upholstery, and it felt like a luxury vehicle. In rural Minnesota, the ability to have a car was a major source of freedom and independence. I lived in town and could walk to my high school, unlike many of my classmates who lived on farms. But when you live in a town that even today only has a population of 1,300 people, there is not a whole lot to explore within walking distance. There is no public transit, and it is a 20-minute drive to the next town. As a younger person, and particularly as a young gay person, I often felt I was on an island with nothing but water visible on every horizon. The internet was not what it is today in 2001. AOL Instant Messenger, Yahoo Search, and downloading music on platforms like Napster were some of the main tools available for navigating the digital world. And my little car was the ship I could use to island hop in the physical one. I could work in the larger town next door. I could see friends that lived miles away. And I could explore a larger circle of the globe than ever before. We went on relatively few family vacations in my childhood, mostly within Minnesota and the surrounding states. The first time I left the country, it was to Canada on a road trip with friends, and the next wasn't until my sophomore year of college. But long before then, I wanted to travel. I think many people have this impulse, and those of us who grew up far from large cities, as well as those of us who grew up knowing that they were not like the majority of their peers, like young LGBTQ people, felt a longing for spaces that could hold more of who we knew ourselves to be. We are seeking not only new vistas, but more hospitable ones. So much of my beginning impulse to journey was not just in search of something, but a form of escape as well, a fleeing from the present toward a better future, very much an anywhere but here approach. I equated the ability to drive, the ability to travel, with both freedom and as a way to avoid the inner conflicts I was going through in adolescence and early adulthood. Instead of reflecting on who I was, I could focus on where I was, where I wasn't, and where I was going next. This is a pattern that I observed in myself frequently over time, and I have a hunch that many of us use travel in this way. In fact, it has been shown that one's happiness increases more during the planning of a trip than in the experiencing of the trip itself. That having something to look forward to and the excitement of imagining what is coming up seems to be as important as the trip itself. What does it mean for us to journey in the physical world as well as within our own lives and in our own minds and hearts? The ways we balance the anticipation of other places and other stages of our lives with living in the very nowness of life is the subject of much religious practice and spiritual discipline over human history. Which brings me to the idea of pilgrimage as a practice of connection. Often, this is seen as a physical journey one takes to make a shift in their spiritual life or connection to their religious tradition. In Islam, the Hajj is an annual Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, the holiest city for Muslims. It is one of the 5 pillars of religious practice of all Muslims. Unitarian Universalists often travel to Boston and surrounding holy sites like Walden Pond to experience the history of our tradition, meeting the lived reality of our present moment. And in Spain, the Camino de Santiago, or the Way of St. James, is a hiked pilgrimage spanning most of northern Spain from the French border to the northwest coast. It is about 500 miles and traditionally walked, which takes a little over a month for most to complete. Piers Nicholson wrote this poem, The Camino, near Sangüesa, Navarra, Spain, in September 2003. When we started, we did not know exactly why we were doing it. We had lives which were more or less satisfactory. We had friends known much of our lives. We had children changed from chrysalis to butterflies. We had things like machines, things like music, things like pictures, things like shelves full of books, things like money and pensions and security. We did not have one thing, and maybe that was why we started. When we started, we put one foot in front of the other. We still did not know precisely why we were doing it. The miles passed, many of them pleasantly. Our feet blistered and were slow to heal. Our ankles turned on loose stones. The rain beat its way through our clothes. The cold chilled the marrow of our bones. Some nights refuge was hard to find. Some days miles of hot dust had no fountains. When the first few of many long days had passed, we found, without words, that we no longer walked together, that together we spoke in our own tongues, and often of things we had left behind where we began, that together we shut out new experience with the wall of our togetherness, that alone we spoke in our common tongues and of our common experience, that alone we were open with interest and curiosity. Often we met with gladness at the end of the day. To know our paths went on together was enough. When we got to the cathedral, we sat down. We saw through the eyes of those long before us the blinding faith, the crucial thirst for salvation, the tower slowly closing off the sky, and we counted our blessings. Several hundred of them, starting with the kindness of ordinary people on the way, and with the warmth of other travelers on the road. Travelers not at all like us, not in age, not in origin, not in interests, but warm across all these distancings and ending with the friendship of and love we had left behind where we began. When we got to the sea at the end of the world, we sat down on the beach at sunset. We knew why we had done it, to know our lives less important than just one grain of sand. To know that we did not need the things we had left behind us. To know that we would nevertheless return to them. To know that we needed to be where we belonged. To know that kindness and friendship and love is all one needs. To know that we did not, after all, have to make this long journey to find this out. To know that, for us, it certainly helped. This year of the pandemic, I have felt at times like the youth in rural Minnesota without a car, unable to traverse the roads away from home. I've longed for airports and trips to pull my mind into the future, and I believe we've been on a pilgrimage together, nonetheless, not one of miles traveled, but of days experienced. Our collective task has been one of survival, to not go and to not do in the service of saving one another. And we have been engaged in the other deep work of reflection about what and who matters, not in an abstract way, but in a very literal one. Who matters in terms of access to healthcare and life-saving measures, to the choice to work from home, and to the ability to get what they need and be as safe as possible all at once. Where we as a country and a people put resources of relief and recovery is part of the reflection, as is how we move forward into this next chapter of life together. If you've not been able to learn the new skills, take on the new hobbies, clean out all the closets, or do the other things that some of us thought we might at the beginning of this shift inward, do not lament. I say again, the primary task we have had together is that of survival and of grieving those who are not here with us today. The secondary task I hope we have some space for is this place to reflect on what we've experienced this year, what this pilgrimage in place has meant and has revealed about who we are and who we might be moving forward. Perhaps this time has revealed the relationships that matter more than you ever knew they did. Perhaps new ones have formed, or some have frayed over the past 12 months. How we spend our time and our money may have shifted a great deal. What might shift back to as it was before? And, more importantly, what might not? The practice of pilgrimage is a practice of connection to our deepest selves and one that asks us to let go of what we do not need, all at the same time. Whether it is a pilgrimage to places never before seen, or a walk down sidewalks we see in new ways, a hike 5 miles from home, or time spent at our own kitchen table looking out the window. The point of pilgrimage is not to travel the farthest distance, but to hold up one's own life as an object of reflection and to see the path that brought us to now, to here in a new way. A way that offers space to consider what the next moment and the next mile might be like, to ask what we carry with us to the next port, what we leave behind, and what we return to when we find ourselves back at our own front door. May your own journey this year be one that has shown you wisdom. May you listen for that voice you recognize at long last as your own. And when you are able to sit on the beach or the living room floor and pause, may you begin to see more clearly than ever before the truth of what matters, and know that this particular journey is one that is uniquely yours, and one that points to the deeper truths that sing out universally from pilgrims whose journeys via cars or ships or on their own 2 feet or on wheels, or those that never cross the threshold of their own front door, hold vast wisdom too. So may it be.